Welcome students. In this lecture, let us look at the different functions of human brain, their structure and the communication between two different neurons. So the first of all what you have to do is you need to identify the structure of the basic element of a brain. That is nothing but a neuron. So when you have different parts in a neuron, the same thing has to be replicated in the artificial neuron also. Once the structure is identified, the next function is to identify the process of communication between the neurons. Here you have two different types of communications. One is called as electrical communication and the other one is called as chemical communication. So you can look at the structure of the neuron where you have three different parts. You have the dendrites, you have the soma or the cell body, and you have axon. If you analyze the function of dendrites, it is close to the keyboard in any computers. It acts as input elements for the signals to enter the human brain from the external environment. They are normally thin, bushy like structures, but when we go for artificial implementation, their structure is irrelevant for us. The second important part is the soma or the cell body, where you have the logical operations and also the computational operations taking place. So what is logical operation? If you give any answer in the form of linguistic information, then we call it as a logical operation. Say for example, somebody is asking, will it rain today? And your reply is maybe, yes or no. This is an operation which we call it as logical. Based on the past history of the data, your brain is trying to give an answer. Same way, somebody else will ask you a question, what is 3 plus 3? Your answer will be 6. Now what happens here is your output is in the form of numbers. Whenever you have something in the form of a number, then we say your operation is computational in nature. Our human brain has the capability of doing both computational and logical operation. Once you have an output, this output is available in the long terminal called as axon, which is equivalent to the monitor of the computer, which is nothing but the output device. Now put together all these elements, we can say that this simple neuron is responsible for some action in the body. However, God's creation is in such a way that there are millions of neurons available in the brain. So whenever the human body makes some function, that is done by a group of neurons rather than a single neuron. So instead of giving emphasis on an artificial neuron, it is very important to analyze the process of artificial neural network. So now let us look at the different operations of artificial neural network. We have two operations. One is called as electrical communication, one is called as chemical communication. In this lecture, let us look at the function of electrical process. This takes place in the soma or the cell body. So how this electrical operation takes place? You can consider a cell where you are going to take the situation of ions which are very prominent in the cell body, inside the cell and outside the cell. Now there are plenty of ions available, but we are going to zero down only on two ions, the sodium ions and the potassium ions. So now we look at the rest state of the human brain. When you say the rest state of the human brain, you can find that the number of potassium ion concentration inside the cell body and outside the cell body is different. That means you can say that the cell body has less number of potassium ions inside and more number of sodium ions outside. Now whenever a trigger is given to the human brain, or when you say that suddenly you look at a snake when you are in the rest state, your body immediately responds and it will do some process. What happens at that time is the sodium ions, which are very prominent outside the cell body, will rush in, and the potassium ions, which are more inside the cell body, will move out. This corresponds to the same potential gradient but with a difference in the polarity. So the resting state you have minus 70 millivolts, but when you go for the action state or the action potential we have plus 70 millivolts. This pass on through the axon and it reaches the input stage of the next neuron. We will look at the chemical process of the human brain in the next class.